All right, let's tackle one of the biggest conversations out there right now, AI in our schools. But look, we're not here to just echo all the hype you've been hearing. No, we're here to challenge that whole story.
I mean, you hear this everywhere, right? Every tech conference, every news headline, it's this really seductive, powerful claim that AI is going to completely upend, everything about how we learn.
But here's the thing. That idea, as appealing as it is just, well, it's fundamentally wrong. Because education isn't some tech problem that you can just disrupt. It's a human problem.
So, this is the crucial point, the main takeaway. AI isn't a revolution. It's an evolution. It's not here to tear down the whole model of a teacher guiding a student. But what it is going to do is profoundly change the tools they have to work with. So let's dive in and see exactly what that means.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the future, we actually have to look back at the past. Because trust me, when it comes to big, new tech in the classroom, we have definitely seen this movie before.
So let's just walk through the cycle of hype, shall we? Back in 1922, you had Thomas Edison, that Thomas Edison, saying motion pictures would make textbooks totally obsolete. Then in the 30s, radio was pitched as this great democratizer of learning. Fast forward to the 50s, and TV was going to be master teachers into every single classroom. And of course, in the 80s, the personal computer was going to be a technological revolution. You see the pattern here, right? It's pretty clear.
And for every single one of these amazing new technologies, the revolutionary hype just fizzled out into a much more modest reality. These grand promises, they always ended up shrinking down into just another limited, supplementary tool. Motion pictures became the occasional visual aid. And for decades, those revolutionary computers were basically just fancy word processors.
So, why? Why did the revolution never actually happen? Well, it always came down to these really persistent, practical problems. The tech was usually too expensive, it was often unreliable, and maybe most importantly, it was just incredibly hard for teachers to actually fit it into their day-to-day lesson plans in a meaningful way.
And this gets right to the heart of the issue. I mean, think about it. If technology really was the silver bullet everyone claimed, why do we still see a massive learning crisis in a place like the Philippines? The problem isn't a lack of gadgets. It's about these really deep systemic issues that a new piece of tech, on its own, has just never been able to fix. Just look at these numbers. A deficit of 91,000 classrooms, 86,000 teachers. These are the massive, real-world problems that no app or shiny new device has ever been able to solve. It's like if your bucket is full of holes, pouring more water, or in this case technology, into it doesn't fix the leaks. It just gives you an expensive, wet bucket. And you know what's even worse? Here's the really uncomfortable truth. Instead of being this great equalizer, technology often makes inequality even bigger. The well-funded schools get the latest tools, all the training, while the under-resourced schools just fall further and further behind. And we are absolutely already seeing this exact same pattern with AI today.
So, all of this brings us from the history of what happened to the science of why it happened. See, to really understand where AI fits in, we have to understand how our brains actually learn. And here's the big reveal. Learning is supposed to be hard.
The Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman gave us this fantastic way to think about it. Basically, our brain has two modes, right? System 1 is your fast, automatic, intuitive thinking. It's like an expert driver just breezing through traffic. Then you have System 2. That's the slow, deliberate, effortful part of your brain, the part you have to fire up to solve a really tricky math problem. It's basically the expert versus the novice.
And this leads us to a really critical idea called desirable difficulties. These are basically challenges that make learning feel slower and, harder in the moment, but they are absolutely essential if you want to build deep, long-term understanding. So in other words, that struggle you feel when you're learning something new, that's not a bug in the system. It's the main feature.
Okay, so the entire goal of education, really, is to guide a student on this exact journey. You start with that hard, clunky, effortful work in System 2, but then, with a lot of rigorous, deliberate practice, that skill starts to move from being something you have to think hard about to something that's just intuitive. And then finally, bam, it becomes an automatic, effortless System 1 skill. And that right there is the definition of mastery.
All right, so with that whole brain science framework in our back pocket, now we can really see why AI in the classroom is such a double-edged sword. It holds both an enormous risk and an absolutely incredible reward. Let's talk about the risk first.
The big danger is that AI offers this super seductive promise, getting the answer without any of the struggle. It can become the ultimate shortcut, the perfect way to bypass all that effortful system 2 thinking we just talked about. You know, the very desirable difficulties that are essential for real learning?
And look, this isn't just some theory. We have proof. A recent MIT study found that a staggering 83% of students who used AI to help write an essay couldn't even quote from the paper they supposedly wrote. And the brain scans from that study are even more telling. They showed that when students used AI, there was way less activity in the parts of the brain that handle things like planning and coming up with ideas. They couldn't remember what they wrote, and their essays were just formulaic, not very creative. It's simple. When the work was outsourced to the AI, the thinking just never actually happened inside their own heads. But that is only half the story. That's the risk. Now let's talk about the reward. The real prize here isn't about letting students bypass work. It's about giving teachers a superpower. AI's true potential is as a co-pilot for educators, helping them finally bridge that huge gap between the best practices they learn about and what's actually possible in a classroom with 30 kids. And here's how it does that. AI makes all those teaching best practices scalable for the very first time. You know, things like giving instant, detailed feedback to every single student on their assignment, or creating different versions of a lesson for different learning levels in the same class. These have been the gold standard, the dream, for decades. But for one teacher, logistically impossible. With AI, suddenly it's possible.
And all of this leads us to a totally new vision for the future of education. It's a future that's not about replacing teachers, but about augmenting them.
So this really captures the entire story we've been telling. AI isn't going to change the fundamental what or why of education. That's still about human connection, about striving for mastery. But it is going to completely transform the how. It's going to empower teachers with incredible new tools to do their jobs better and, crucially, free them up to focus on the stuff that really matters.
And that newfound efficiency, that frees up our brain power, our cognitive bandwidth to start tackling what experts call wicked problems. And these are just the huge, complex, messy challenges that don't have a simple, easy solution. Think about things like climate change, social inequality, or hey, even the very education crisis we've been talking about this whole time.
So I want to leave you with this question. If we can use AI to handle the routine tasks, to automate the grunt work, and to speed up research, what happens when we free up our most precious resource, the collective brain power of our teachers and our students? With the machines handling the boring stuff, what truly wicked, truly important problems can we finally have the time and the energy to solve? Now that is the real promise of this evolution.